So many good seasons, bad seasons.
Pop superstar Justin Bieber arrested at Miami Beach overnight.
Now to our GMA cover story, Justin Bieber revealing his serious struggles with drugs and making bad decisions, saying it's taken him years to bounce back. Now he's thanking the people who helped him recover.
Bieber sharing overnight on Instagram that it's hard to get out of bed in the morning with the right attitude when you are overwhelmed with your life, your past, job, responsibilities, emotions, your family, finances, your relationships. When it feels like there's trouble after trouble after trouble, sometimes it can even get to the point where you don't even want to live anymore. The superstar now saying he's in a better place, married to Hailey Baldwin, with years of what he calls terrible decisions and broken relationships behind him. All of which, he says, led him to abruptly put his career on hiatus in 2017.
My life is changing a lot. Getting married, getting back in the studio, talking about getting married, like just writing about the process and just being creative with being in this new chapter and being happy about what I'm doing and not like, I don't know, just being in a good headspace.
Pop idol Justin Bieber had to say sorry for calling out the rest of his Purpose tour, citing unforeseen circumstances. But now TMZ is reporting that those circumstances may have something to do with this man.
He will heal you in places you didn't even know you were broken.
The last 2 or 3 years which have led up to this album, there's been some really significant change in your life, and the album being called Changes focuses on one. And we're going to get to a place of happiness, and this album is a happy album. I mean, it's really, you know, it feels to me like a musical tribute to your relationship. Why did you stop the tour in 2017, and what was the reason for that?
I was really tired emotionally, physically, and I was sick, and I didn't realize I was sick. So I had like Epstein-Barr, which is like, it's called mono. And then I have Lyme disease. So it was that, it was just, you know, the exhaustion of just being on tour. And then it was just everything compounded, I think. I was doing the ice bath every day. I was eating salmon twice a day. Like I was doing the right thing to try to take care of my body. And it was just like nothing was, just felt depleted and felt all the time. So I was like, you know, and then that took an emotional toll on me. So I was like, you know, I just didn't know what that on. I really took a deep dive in my faith, to be honest. I just went deep into like, I believed in Jesus, but I never really like, you know, when it says following Jesus is actually turning away from sin. And so there's no, what it talks about in the Bible, it's like there's no obedience. There's no faith without obedience. So it's like I had faith about like, oh, I believe Jesus died on the cross for me, but I never really implemented it into my life. I never like was like, I'm gonna be obedient. So I was like, I wasn't sleeping around. I wasn't doing a lot of stuff. I just was kind of by myself. And
how did you who helped you come to that? Because I'm sure there are a lot of, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way, it's just humanity and everyone's on their own journey. There are a lot of people who are practicing one belief or another, but as you say, it's different when you say it as opposed to actually acting within its guidelines, which are there to give you ultimate focus, right, on what's important. So when did you decide to actually move within the guidelines, and how did you find yourself away from, yeah, I believe in Jesus, but I'm going to drink or do drugs or sleep around or all these other distractions? How did you get out of that world? What was the turning point for you?
I think it was my perception of who Jesus really was, you know? I'd had really bad examples of Christians in my life who would say one thing and do another. So they were my direct example of who Jesus was.
That's why you didn't take it seriously.
I didn't take it as seriously because I didn't have good examples.
Good role models.
Yeah, and so I think the more I really looked at the character of who Jesus really was.
Did you grow up in a Christian household?
I grew up in a Christian household, yeah. But my mom was, she was really hurt growing up. I mean, she had so many things going on in her life, so she was navigating her faith journey. For me, it was just confusing because she'd say one thing and then like she would say, well, you're forgiven, but then I'd do something bad or whatever was supposedly bad, but then she'd make me feel ashamed for it. So it's like, well, if Jesus forgives me, then why are you making me feel bad for doing something? Like, obviously there's like a form of like, we gotta make sure we keep our kids accountable and punish our kids so that they learn from their mistakes. But like, if there's this God named Jesus who died for our sins so that we don't have to live in shame, then why? It was just things like that that would make me really question, like, who is this Jesus guy? And I didn't really take a deep look into who he was.
It's tough. I mean, I get it. Like hey man, our parents do the best they can. Do you think that if you hadn't redefined what Jesus was and reclaimed it into something that was worthy of practice for you, which then led you on a path of reconciliation with your wife, do you think the person that the you of then was on a path of self-destruction? Do you feel that you were self-destructing?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would have, for sure, 100%. Yeah, 100%. It would have been no bueno. It was bad. It would have been, yeah. I don't know if I'd be alive for sure. It was dark, really dark. So I'm very, very grateful to have influences in my life that have played a huge part in me seeing their relationship with Jesus and their relationship with their wives and their relationship with their kids and saying, that's what I want, and striving after that.
It was understandable why he got himself into trouble. His rise to fame was too quick and too big for any normal young person to handle. But now he's happy. He's putting biblical principles into practice in his marriage, and it looks like it's working. Perhaps you've got problems in life and you've heard it said that God has a wonderful plan for your life. We're going to look at that wonderful plan and then go back to Justin very briefly, and then we'll look at why it is that Christians live an incredible 4 years longer than atheists.
I never want to be someone that's trying to persuade anyone to believe in what I believe. I think God persuades people.
We have lost the fear of God in our nation. And one major contributor to this is the gospel that's been proclaimed. The gospel of God has a wonderful plan for your life. If that's what you preach, let me challenge you as to the scriptural nature of that. Firstly, let's deal with the abundant life. You know what the word abundant means? Full. That's all it means. The Apostle Paul had an abundant life, full of beating, stoning, shipwreck, imprisonment, and martyrdom. A very full life. Everywhere he went, he was hated for his name's sake. Tell Stephen about the wonderful plan as rocks crush his bones and kill him. Or the first 11 disciples murdered for their faith. Or read Fox's Book of Martyrs and see how the church foundation is soaked in blood. But if you really want to hang on to the God has a wonderful plan for your life message, let me give you this scenario. You've been asked to preach to 1,000 people on the 100th story of the World Trade Center, September the 10th, 2001. As you look at the 1,000 faces in front of you, you know that every one of these people are going to die a horrific death. Some will leap 100 stories to the unforgiving sidewalks of New York. Others will stay in the building and fall with it and be crushed to a point where their bodies would never be recovered. Others will be burned alive with jet fuel. So what are you going to say to these people? People that you know are going to die within 24 hours, a horrible death. God has a wonderful plan for your life? You can't say that. Oh no. You would have a sober attitude, and that you're speaking to people who are going to die, and you'd probably say to them something like this: oh, please listen to me. Every year, 54 million people die. People like you and me, making plans for tomorrow that will never come. 54 million every year. Young people, older people. Aneurysm, car accident, heart attack, snatched into eternity. No second chance. And the Bible says it's appointed a man once to die, and after this, the judgment. And then you say, you have to face a holy God. Not the God of your own image, not the God you've snuggled up to all your life, prayed to and treated like a divine butler, but you have to face a holy God who is a fire of justice. A God who has set aside a day in which he'll judge the world in righteousness. And Jesus warned, whoever falls upon the stone shall be broken, but on whosoever stone shall fall, it shall grind him to powder. Now, what did Jesus mean by that? Well, if you grind something to powder, you do a thorough job. And God's justice on the day of judgment will be absolute and thorough. He'll judge right down to your thoughts and the intents of your heart. So if you had those 1,000 people before you, and you knew what you were doing and knew the biblical presentation of the gospel, you would make them tremble because they've sinned against God. You would do what Nathan did to David. When David stole another man's wife and committed adultery and then had him killed, what did Nathan do? Come up to him and say, God has a wonderful plan for your life. What's that got to do with anything? David had sinned against God. He had broken the commandments. So Nathan gave him a little story about a man who stole another man's lamb. And when David said, that man will restore fourfold and he will die, then Nathan said, you are the man. Why have you despised the commandment of the Lord? And David said, I've sinned against God. And then came the gospel. Then came, nevertheless, you shall not die, for God has put away your sin. And we live in a nation of adulterers and blasphemers with no fear of God before their eyes. And so to run around saying God has a wonderful plan for your life has got nothing to do with anything. We need to do what Nathan did and be faithful and confront them about their sins. And we can do it if we do it in love and in gentleness.
I never want to be someone that's trying to persuade anyone to believe in what I believe. I think God persuades people, but I want to definitely tell my story so that if that resonates to anybody, that they can hopefully